Hi, it's Corey, the co-host of Bro Sports and host of Jerseys and Jail Cells, here to ask one favor to you guys. Please join our small but mighty channel to help us reach our goal of 100 subscribers by the end of April. And if we reach that goal, we will be doing a special edition podcast questionnaire of any question or idea that you guys might have down below in the comments of any of our podcasts. Thank you and enjoy the show. Welcome to Jerseys and Jail Cells, where we explore the stories behind the game, the victories, the challenges, and the decisions that shape careers. I'm Corey Raftery, here to guide you through the world of athletes, teams, and the choices that define them. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Jerseys and Jail Cells here on the YouTube channel Raftery Productions. I'm your host, Corey Raftery, and today we will be discussing Tyree and his recent runs in with the law. And we're going to look starting back during his childhood when it comes to his grandparents that he was living with during that his time growing up. His grandmother was charged with trespassing and disorderly conduct, as well as giving false information to police officers. Um, and then as his grandfather, he was in and out of prison for 15 different criminal cases from the span of 1989 till 2016, and they were for theft and burglary charges that were put onto him, and he did serve time at some point during that time period. And now that we look at Tyreek Hill, he didn't have necessarily anything go on during his childhood from before the age of 18, but then once he got into college, it was a whole different story. Starting with the first notable thing that kind of started his apparent outburst, just all of a sudden, uh, when he was in at the Oklahoma State University, uh, in 2014, he was arrested and charged with domestic abuse for strangling his pregnant girlfriend at the time. And eventually, he did do some medical treatment and did some rehabilitation for domestic violence. But he was then eventually uh, let go from Oklahoma and eventually made his way over to went to the University of West Alabama after being terminated at Oklahoma State University. And then from there, he got into the NFL draft, was, pretty quiet throughout the couple years in between uh, his first instance with the law with a domestic abuse case. And then following that, in 2019, he allegedly had another abuse case for one of his sons, a 3-year-old son who is unnamed, and it was then later dropped due to insufficient information on the report. And once again, I don't understand why he has a previous prior to domestics, and then somehow in this investigation for child abuse, they don't take into consideration what he's done already. And although yes, it was expunged and it was dismissed eventually, you have to wonder, why don't they keep that in consideration, that maybe he might do it again? And the fact that they couldn't get him on this kind of confuses me. But at the end of the day, if he was proven innocent, he was proven innocent. There is nothing wrong about that. Then, following 2019, in 2023, 2024, and 2025, he was also involved in instances with the law, with an assault accusation in Miami with an employee at the marina, and eventually they both, I guess, settled things civilly, but it was you could see the different change in Tyreek Hill, maybe trying to make amends with people and not try to hold grudges against others. That he's having these instances or these accusations towards him for violence, and then it just went off the rail again. In 2024, he had that infamous traffic incident that I'm sure many people have seen, when he was just driving very recklessly in Miami to get to a game because he was late, and it was a preseason game for the Dolphins, and he was very disorderly with the officers that were involved with him. The officers also, I would say, were disorderly with him, but at the same time, you can't you can't disobey an officer even if you think they're in the wrong. It's not it's not the right way to go if you want to try to prove that they're wrong. Um, a lot of the times you want to just be like, okay, sure, and then deal with it later, because at the end of the day, you don't want to make your situation worse than it already was. And for him, the the, f- the fact that he was driving recklessly, he was speeding, he was driving without his seatbelt, and eventually the citations were later dismissed due to the lack of the police officer's presence at the hearing. But again, you need to consider what is going on for not only the police officer's side of things, but like for your own self. You cannot conduct yourself in a way like that and expect to be treated a certain way. He immediately, when you watch the video, immediately he was argumentative right off the bat. He was disobeying orders multiple times, and he, if he just listened the first time, it would have been a whole different situation. It wouldn't have been publicis- pu- polit- politicized and made so like over the top for no reason. If he hadn't just acted out in the right way. And then in 2025, he's had a domestic dispute report put against him. And right now, there was no charges that were filed, as both statements that argued did not turn physical. And although a lot of this is just accusations, and then the only time that he was actually convicted and then it was expunged was in his time in college. And that's really the only things when it comes to his involvement with being prosecuted. But who's to say that he might not do it again, as he's got a long list of this pretty much the same exact charges, except for one other than the one in Miami when he was driving recklessly. But the again, the idea that there might be some underlying issues that are causing him to act out and be like this is has to be evaluated. I actually do think that was a good recommendation, in one of his cases. I believe it was in the 2019 case that he needed to be evaluated, and the judge was like, no, he's fine. But at the same time, when you have all these, I think that's grounds, even if they were dismissed and they were found that there was no good evidence, there still should be some kind of psych evaluation for any player that's ex- exercising these kind of attitudes and issues um, out on others and are causing them to get involved with law enforcement. And this can go with not just Tyreek Hill, it can go for any player in the NFL or in any other sport that involves contact, because head injuries are not something to mess with. And I think that's all a big issue is CTE. And I've mentioned this before and in previous episodes that I think CTE is to blame for a lot of these players who act out and do all these things that eventually either put themselves in prison or they're not found guilty, but their careers get damaged and tarnished. Or for Ray Rice, in our previous episode 2 of Jerseys and Jail Cells, he changed his life for the better and got the help that he needed. And if Tyreek Hill can do that, and he's showing better improvement for himself, that goes a long way. I'm not saying the guy is bad. I just think he's made some bad decisions in his early adult life, and hopefully, after all these instances with the law, it'll hopefully change him for the better. But even after the first time that he was he pled guilty in 2015, he there he still didn't learn from his lessons because he had 3 other instances of abuse or domestic abuse or involvement with assaulting someone else. And it begs the question, why did he do these things, or why is there allegations against him for these specific things, and why do they end up are found not true, or there's not enough evidence? Well, maybe he's trying to hide something. Maybe he pays people off to be quiet. Who knows? But you cannot assume something unless you know it's true. But there's many ways people can silence people to make it harder for them to get in trouble. And Tyreek Hill is a really well-known person, and he's very controversial in social media, in the atmosphere of the NFL. And the only thing you can do is hope that they get the help that they need and do what they need to do to make their lives successful and do what's best for the people that are looking up to them, because you don't want these athletes and celebrities to be showing the wrong for our youth, because at the end of the day our youth are going to be the future of that sport, and we don't want the same bad habits being put onto those athletes as well. But that is all I have for you folks for this week's episode of Jerseys and Jail Cells here on the YouTube channel Raftree Productions. Don't forget to drop a follow on the YouTube channel, as we are trying to reach 100 subscribers by the end of April. That is all I have for you for this week's episode of Jerseys and Jail Cells. Next week, we will be taking a look at the NCAA point shaving scheme and the NBA betting and poker scandal that went on in 2025. Have a good one and take care.